Hi, hello, Kendron.
Hey.
Good.
I'm putting myself on mute, by the way.
It's okay. It's the later. I'm going to mute all.
Audio by phone.
Okay, I see it. Wow, I see everyone
Okay.
on the YouTube.
Hey.
Good.
It's nice.
Putting myself on mute,
Oh,
by
let's
the way.
not do that.
Putting
I
myself
think okay.
You cannot be.
Okay, I see it.
When
Wow,
it's
I
supposed to
see
come
everyone
out,
on the YouTube.
about-
You wanted to see everybody?
Yeah.
Nice.
Putting myself on mute, by the way.
Leave 吧，是吧？
Putting myself on mute. You cannot be.
Yeah. That's the reason why I want this.
Okay. Wow, I see everyone on the YouTube. Wow, I see everyone. Nice.
Putting myself on mute.
Only 7. No,
You cannot be.
They have
I don't know. 11. 11 yet. 7.
how do they come up? How do they come up? They have 40 people.
Tracy, hi. Tracy.
How come you don't? You should know a lot of things. I know, yeah.
Tracy, hi. Tracy.
I know, yeah. I know, yeah.
I know.
君君，你看看我能不能够多一些那个出来
Rachel. Rachel.
？Hello, yes,
Thank
Hi.
you. Thank you. Pick up the view as a gallery view, so you can see
yes.
all
君
the
君，你
people.
看看我能不能够多一些那个 ？Right, right. Yeah, that's good, pretty good. Thank you. Hello, yes, Hi.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank
Hi.
you. Pick up the view as a gallery view, so you can see
Yes,
all
君
the
君，你
people.
看看我能不能够多一些那个？Right, right. Yeah, that's good, pretty good. Thank you. Hello, yes, Hi.
Hello.
Pick up the view as a gallery view, so you can see
Yes,
all the
君
people.
君，你看看我能不能够多一些那个？Right, right. Yeah, that's good, pretty good. Thank you. Hello, yes, Hi. Hello.
Pick up the view as a gallery view, so you can see all the people.
你看看我能不能够多一些那个？Right, pretty good. Thank you. Hello, yes, Hi. Hello.
Pick up the view
你看看我能不能够多一些那个？
Hi, Rob.
Hey, Don, you're looking good.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for doing this. All right, it works. I'm just gonna do one text. Hey, Don, you're looking good. Hey, Don, thank you for doing this. All right, it works. Thank you for doing this. All right, it works. Thank you for doing this.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hey, Alex.
Hi.
Hey, Alec.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hey, Ken.
Hello, Rob.
Hi.
Hey, Alec.
Hello.
We got everybody like a
Hello.
album. It's
Hello.
is Mr. Andrew Yan there? We got everybody like a album. Oh.
Hello.
Is Mr. Andrew Yan there? We got everybody like a couple more minutes, almost 11.
Yeah, I just texted to Andrew and he's going to on. So it's after he's on, we're going to start it.
Couple more
Okay?
minutes,
Yeah.
almost 11.
Hi Ken, how are you?
Very good. I'm doing well.
Yeah, I just texted to Andrew and he's going to on. So it's after he's on, we're going to start it.
Couple more
Okay?
minutes,
Yeah.
almost 11.
Hi Ken, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Hey, Andrew. Andrew.
Oh, there we go. Hey,
Can you
Don,
hear
how are
me,
you?
Andrew?
Yeah, I can hear you now. How are you, Don? Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yes.
Andrew.
You test again, Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Yep,
Yeah.
we got you, Don. We
Okay,
got
good.
everyone.
Good.
Ken.
It's working. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Andrew?
Yeah, I can hear
Hey,
you.
Andrew.
Oh, Andrew.
Hey, Ro, how are you? Hey, Sandy.
Good, how are you?
Who else
Did
is
your
here?
video ever go
You
live?
test
Or?
again, Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Yeah, it did, Ro. It launched on Monday. It's up to 2.2 million views. If you want to.
Oh, great. So I can tweet.
Wow,
Can you send
2.2.
me, Andrew?
Yeah, I'll send it to you right now, Ro.
Good, hurry up. Did your video ever go live?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did,
Okay.
Ro. It launched on Monday. It's up to 2.2.
Great, I'll tweet. Oh, Fib, wow. I guess I have to. Send me, Andrew.
Yeah, I'll send it to you right now, Ro.
Good, hurry up. Did your video ever go live?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did,
Okay.
Ro. It launched on Monday. It's up to 2.2.
Great, I'll tweet. Oh, Fib, wow. I guess I have to.
Hello,
Yeah,
hello
I'll send it to you right
everyone.
now, Ro.
Good, hurry up. Did your video ever go live?
Yeah, it did,
Okay.
Ro. It launched on Monday. It's up to 2.2.
Great, I'll tweet. Oh, Fib, wow. I guess I have to.
Hello, hello everyone. Yeah,
Hello, hello.
hello. Let's start it, okay? And today's program is we have the first API Leadership Council meeting, and all people here just try to be at the paid membership to support Andrew's Humanity Forward. And also today we invited Congressman Khanna. He's from California District 17th. So the moderator today is Ken Fang, and the timeline is probably around 1 hour to 1 hour 15 minutes. I try to give people the as many time as possible to ask questions, either to Andrew or to Ro. And at the time, if you don't speak, you just don't talk. And most of the question we try to go through chat section. So if you have a question, just send through the chat. So it's either Andrew or Ro can read the question and answer the question. People is here is all mute except the host Ken Fang, Ro Khanna, and Andrew. Let's start the program. I'll turn the mic to Ken Fang now.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. We must thank Don for organizing this Zoom meeting. He had to spend a lot of time on it. And this is unprecedented because right now we have Andrew and also our local Congressman Ro Khanna here. And they have a lot of things in common, you know. So first of all, actually I like Andrew to say something about his program, his new initiative, and then would go to Ro Khanna to talk about that as well. And but I don't want to introduce too much about Andrew. We know him so well, but I will spend a little bit of time later to introduce our congressman. Okay, without further ado, Andrew, go ahead. And you have
Thank you,
about
Ken.
10.
Sure
Yeah,
thing.
10 to 15 minutes.
Really so long. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Don. Thank you in particular to Ken Fang and Alec Wang for your generous donations. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for your leadership. So the All Americans campaign launched this week. It got 2.2 million views just on my social media, and that's just on Twitter actually. So Instagram probably had another several 100,000. So and that was just on mine. There were a couple dozen celebrities who were involved: Lisa Ling, Dave Chappelle, Van Jones, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and on and on. So it's very exciting. We're raising money for COVID relief and also raising awareness about the fact that Asian Americans are Americans and that racism against us is wrong. I'm happy to say that it looks like this campaign is going to continue on, where the NBA wants to partner on another video. And I will be speaking about anti-Asian racism at an NBA town hall, National Basketball Association, for those of you, it's like, you know, LeBron and all those. So we're trying to get NBA players to participate in a PSA, and really excited about this initiative because it's so vital in our community, where we all know racism has surged against Asians over the last number of days, and it's heartbreaking and tragic, and it's underreported. I'm sure even the reports we're seeing are just scratching the surface of the reality that Asian Americans are facing around the country. So very proud of that. We're going to be working hard to keep on amplifying that message. I also believe that this is going to be a central theme of the fall election, because the Republicans are going to continue to try and frame the coronavirus as the China virus, as a Chinese effort. There's a memo saying that this is what they're going to do because it distracts from their own handling or mishandling of the pandemic. And we all know that most Americans struggle to distinguish between Chinese government, Chinese people, Chinese Americans, and Asian Americans. And that if Donald Trump and Joe Biden get into a who's tougher on China shouting match, which seems to be the dynamic right now, that Asian Americans will suffer as a result, because most Americans, again, cannot really distinguish between these groups. So this is, to me, something very, very important. I'm going to be on Joe's podcast next week. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about it then. And hopefully this All Americans campaign can help prevent that dynamic by calling attention to the fact that there are millions of Asian Americans that were just as Americans as anyone else, and that we're victims of this virus just like anyone else. So we have nothing to do with it. We're not any more likely to have the coronavirus. So this is something I'm really proud of. I'm excited about. We hope we can make it an ongoing effort through the fall and potentially even beyond if this racism continues to be such a pressing issue for our community. So that's front and center. Also, I launched a podcast this week that was top 10 in the United States upon launch. Right now, I think it's like 18 or something like that. Ken Jeong is the first guest next week. So that also, I guess, is kind of aligned with the AAPI Heritage Month. and we're excited about that as a way to just keep getting ideas out there that will move the entire country forward, humanity forward. Thanks to many of the people here, has already distributed 1.4 million in economic relief. It looks like we have a very large donation coming in next week that will enable us to distribute more than 1 million more. And so this is something I'm grateful to you all for helping with, but it's a massive need right now. We have, I believe, something like 40,000 Americans who've reached out to us for help. And if we were to give each of them $250, that would be $10 million. So that is like the scope of what the needs look like around the country. And even that is just scratching the surface, we all know. So excited to have your support and help on these efforts. We're just doing as much work as we can to help as many people as we can, and also to shed light on what people are doing. And I think I'm uniquely able to help shine a light because, for whatever reason, I think Asian American activities and organizations tend to fall outside of the media spotlight. And you can have your own explanation as to why that is. But I'm hoping that I can bring the spotlight to what we're doing with organizations like the NBA, using mainstream celebrities, political figures. So the All Americans campaign you probably saw, but I personally reached out to every presidential candidate and got Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Tom Steyer, Beto, Julian, Marianne Williamson, like all to amplify the message. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that I think we need to do more of, that we have to try to make sure that Americans who don't customarily pay attention to what Asian American organizations are doing can see that we're doing everything we can to help in this time. So thank you all for your help and support. Really excited to work with you to keep on moving this set of ideas forward and answer questions. I think I hit my time right on the head nose. So I will pass the baton, I believe, to Ro. Is that right, Ken?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me introduce our Congressman Ro a little bit. Okay, and you can always add it to some of the things I have missed about you, Ro. And Ro, that has been our Congressman for the last 3 years, and he's represented the 17th district, and which is right here at the center of the Silicon Valley. And just like Andrew has two things in common, they're about the same age. Maybe about one and a half years difference, right? And Rhodes actually 1.5 years younger, and they're both lawyers, so that's a good common ground between both of them. And he has written two books before he became a congressman. One is called The Entrepreneurial Nation, and the other book is Manufacturing is Absolutely Important to the Future of America. So that tells you a little about what he believes in, and this is actually quite appropriate to America at this point, bringing, manufacturing back to America. And that's why he has been involved with training and retraining, advocating training and retraining of Americans to meet the changing challenge of technology. And also I was told that he's actually one of the most influential young, congressmen right now, in our country. So without further ado, I think I give the podium to you, Ro.
Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you for such a generous introduction and for your leadership over the years, your friendship over the years. Thank you, Don Son, for helping put this together. I am such a huge fan of Andrew, and don't want to embarrass him on the call, but let me just say, Andrew did an extraordinary service for the entire Asian American community. When people started texting me saying, he's charismatic and charming, why can't you be like that? I said, okay, we've got it made now that they're describing an Asian American presidential candidate as charismatic, as charming, as someone who I think made it mainstream to see Asian Americans in the face of leadership, and who didn't do that just on the basis of being Asian American, but on a very substantive agenda of how we're going to respond to a changing economy, to globalization, how we're going to make sure people who are left behind have a stake in participating. And his ideas are, now you see Speaker Pelosi is saying, yes, we may need a minimum income during COVID. And of course, I've proposed with Tim Ryan a $2,000 a month during this crisis. So, there was a great headline about how Reality had endorsed Bernie Sanders. Well, I'll say, Reality has endorsed Andrew Yang's idea. I mean, everyone now from Mitt Romney to Pelosi to Mnuchin is talking about a monthly payment to Americans, and we're hoping the next stimulus will have that. This effort that Ken, you and others have started is so important to make sure that the Asian American community is not profiled, that there is not hate. I thought the video Andrew has done is terrific, and I'll be sharing it. And it's incredibly important for us to emphasize at this point the positives of the Asian American community. I mean, we're on the front lines as doctors, as nurses dealing with this pandemic, as hospital workers. We're on the front line of doing the research that's going to lead to vaccines, that's going to lead to antiviral cures. We're in the front lines of a lot of the technology solutions for contact tracing, for figuring out how to do telemedicine. So I think we have to uplift the community to say, look, this is what the Asian American community is enabling in the COVID response. And we've been on the front lines. I mean, think about it. How many people are dependent on Zoom? I mean, I had a call with the CEO, Eric, of Zoom, and it was unconscionable what some of the politicians did on that issue. He patiently explained to me that 99% of the data never goes to China, that was like the fourth backup, that it got triggered.
Characterizing it as a Chinese entity, I thought was wrong, like very destructive.
Yeah.
It's not a Chinese entity, and it was not. The amount of data that has actually gone through Chinese servers was minuscule. It's like the fourth backup or something that they have, which when it was bombarded with people using it, got triggered, and they were transparent about it. But the point is, think about a world where we didn't have Zoom. I mean, the Congress wouldn't be operational. And that's an Asian American entrepreneur who helped to do that. Think about how many Asian Americans are responsible for the technology that's allowing groceries to be delivered, that's allowing people to get their supplies. So I think we have to tell the positive story of the contributions of the Chinese American, Indian American community, not just not just to Silicon Valley, but to the country. So I am very, very supportive of this effort to make sure that we do not have hate, we're not profiling, that we're lifting up the positive, and then finally that we're looking at how to create the proper relationship with China. I mean, yes, there are places where China needed to be more transparent. Obviously, that's the case. Yes, there are cases where there are issues of intellectual property and trade that are genuine, but we also need to cooperate with China on climate change, on solving pandemics, and moving towards a world where we're going to be the two biggest economies and the two great powers. And how do we do that in a responsible way, I think is going to be critical, not just to our nation, but to the fate of the 21st century.
Thank you very much, Ro. It seems like the understanding of the issue is very common to us. And so, you know that not long ago, you know, the Muslim was targeted because of 9/11. And then later you have the issue about the police targeting the Black Americans. Now actually it's our turn, right? The Asian Americans' turn, you know. So I think these are kind of things not new to us in this country. So we have to face it and fight for our right in this country. You know, that's right. Okay, we're gonna have some question and answer, and maybe I do have some question we just sent it to Don, and he actually sent it to me. So we actually ask this question first before we go to the other, you know, attendants, or what? Okay, let's do that. The question, see, let me see if I find my question here, and maybe let's go to the audience. I just have to find all this question from some of the participants. Okay, maybe let's go to the audience here. You know, what kind of question you might have for Andrew and also for Ro. So they are open for your question. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Albert. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I see Ro's direction and Andrew's effort in making Asian American a part of the fabric of this country. And to that effort, what should we do? And Andrew suggested maybe be really American, and that caused a lot of backlashes. I actually kind of agree with Andrew. You know, sometimes you have to do a little more, but of course, I also understand why the backlashes came. So what do you, Ro and Andrew, suggest that we can do so that we can shed this forever part foreigner that's been with us for Chinese Americans like 150 some years?
So what I believe we have to do is really what you all have been fighting for a long time, which is to try and increase Asian American political engagement, voting levels, donation levels, running for office. What I say to folks, Albert, is that right now Asian Americans are not front and center in terms of either party's political calculations. But it's also the case that we don't vote as much as other groups, that we donate less than other groups, that we are located in very blue or very red states that we're not going to be a swing vote for. So part of it is really investing. And I know many of the people here are doing just that. In the near term, many efforts should just be trying to help mitigate this crisis. So that's donating PPE to healthcare workers, which I know many of you have done, and by supporting organizations that are providing economic relief and just helping people get through this. So this is like, I would say, Albert, that there are a couple of just preconceptions you have about Asian Americans that, you know, I don't think are completely inaccurate. So our parents or we came here for greater economic opportunities, and that is our focus. We're not as politically engaged. And if we do decide to help other people, we help other Asian Americans. like, and that even that's not exactly a norm. Now there are people that are in position to help organizations that aren't Asian American organizations, and I think if we can just show that we are investing
After they
in
do,
communities that are national in scope. Right now, we all know that the biggest victims of this crisis are the poor, overlapping with communities of color, that the fatality rates among Blacks in Michigan and Louisiana are like several times, even 6 times higher than for white Americans. So if we can show that we're investing in those problems, then I think we can change how people see us. And that's really where I am. It's like we have to try and solve the biggest problems that that are on the table right now. And if we do that, then I think it's going to help people's sense of the Asian American community. And that's going to be a big challenge for us. But I think that is the right way to go.
Yeah,
Hello?
another question? Yeah, go ahead.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you. Go ahead.
This is Linda.
Oh, Linda, go ahead, Linda.
I'm Linda Cao Yang. I welcome Mr. Andrew Yang to this session. I lived through the McCarthy era. I was in the United States since, in late 40s and early 50s. I realized how painful a period it was for us Asian Americans, particularly Chinese Americans. Okay, but I had no status. I was not a citizen, and most of us had no voice. But now we have a voice. However, I have to say that we ethnic Asian Chinese Americans don't have to do what the Japanese did while they were in the internal camps. Because many of my Japanese friends told me in those days, young people want to prove they're truly American, that they volunteered in the armed forces. And as a result, they were all grouped into that one brigade, was sent to Italy, where it suffered the highest casualties for that group. And one of my friends who came back, who lost an arm in that battle, wanted to have a haircut. He was told, we don't cut hair for the Japs. Okay. Now, I don't think we Asian Americans need to do extra to demonstrate we are Americans. Why should we? We have to speak up and back up and stand up and have our voices heard and insist our voices are heard. Now we are citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Do you have any comment on that, Andrew and also Ro?
Certainly, I agree that we need to speak up and assert our Americanness. And to the people who resent the fact that an additional burden is being put on our community because of the racism that's hand in hand with the coronavirus, I agree that it's completely unfair and unfounded. But I do happen to think that that is the reality we are faced with. Like our Americanness is being called into question. Like racism against us is surging. It's terrible. It's not fair. But the question is, what can you do? And you're talking about like encounters in grocery stores or on the street. I mean, like it's like a very, very, it's going to be with us for a long time. And I agree with the fact that we need to speak up. I also think we need to do more.
Okay. How about Rose? Any comment on this, Rose?
I appreciate the sacrifice and discrimination that previous generations have faced. I mean, we haven't faced the brunt of it. I mean, obviously, it goes back to the Chinese Exclusion Act in the late 1800s, and then the internment camp issue with in the 1940s with Japanese Americans. I mean, until 1923, with this famous case with the Indian American was not allowed to be considered a citizen in this country, the Sindh case. So we've had a lot of people make a lot of sacrifices, so that Andrew and I now have the opportunity to at least have a seat at the table. And I think we have to highlight how critical the Asian American community is for the economic success of the United States and for our success in so many different dimensions.
I have a question for you, Ro. Do you feel that the Indian American have done a better job than the other Asian American? If so, how do you feel about what they have done to make a difference?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if anything, I mean, as Andrew's candidacy was a testament to, I mean, he was the first, I would argue, credible Asian American presidential candidate. I think there have been a lot of successful Asian American, Chinese Americans in Congress. Judy Chu is the chair of FAPAPA, Ted Lieu, Mark Takano. And the Indian American community, I think, is a little bit more recent. I mean, you have me and Pramila and Ami Bera Raja, but most of those have been in the last few years. So I think that the political culture of the Chinese American community has been more established than the Indian American community. Where I think the Indian American community and Chinese American community have to do better is to coordinate and collaborate more. We are too small as communities, and we both bring different strengths. But I think if we were to collaborate more, as Albert Wang has seen and Don has seen, we've done locally in Fremont. I mean, I'm having a conference call with Lily May and work with her on many issues, and work with Don. And I think if we could do that more at a national level, not just locally, it will make us a much stronger force.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here from Katie Yu for Ro. Her question is like, can you extend the bill that you have proposed to the Congress of $2,000 into a long-term UBI format? That's her question.
Well, I appreciate that, Katie. And of course, the bill was inspired in part by Andrew's work on UBI. I don't think we're having trouble getting even people on board with 6 months of this, or a year extension, which is where our bill does. So we're trying, but I think as a pragmatic matter, the votes are not there. The votes haven't been there even to get a few months, let alone longer than that. But what we're trying is to push to get it for a few months. If we succeed in that, I think it can set up the model for some kind of income support in the future, and not just in this, but someone's trying to change jobs, or is trying to start a business, that there could be some sense that people ought to be getting some income support. But I think this is the first serious effort at it in Congress.
Okay.
Hey, Ro, can we hear more about this? Like, how many votes do you have? Like, what does that look like? Because I see more people signing on all the time. I'm just very interested.
No. I think when we got David Cicilline, that was a big deal because he's part of the leadership. We have about 70 members of Congress, which is a pretty big number. If you get to 100, that's kind of the magic number, and we've already gotten 70, and that's why you saw Pelosi say just a few days ago, I mean, she used your language, saying, I'm open to having a universal minimum income, and that's something that should be on the table. That was a huge change from her in candor. I mean, she's never been open to the idea before. So I would at this point be very surprised if we don't get at least a few months of stimulus. Now, Washington is a hard place to change, and we shouldn't underestimate what a big win that would be if we got that. And I'm not saying this just because you're on the phone. I mean, everyone, when they think of this idea, thinks of your campaign, because that was your singular. We had other issues, but that was your tagline, and so it's had an impact.
Hey, Ro, to the extent that there are 30 legislators that, or you probably can't list all 30, but like, just if you were to put something out, like I could try and get people to lobby, like maybe not, I mean, all 30 I could do, but like, if there are people that need like a push, just like let's commune offline, because that's tremendous. It sounds like we could do it, and anything we do, even for like a few months, is like a freaking game changer for millions of people.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. One thing that could happen, and I don't have the list in front of me, but I can get that, is we can at least see that all of the Asian American caucus should be supportive of it, and that's and I know people here have relationships with different members. Most of them, I think, already are. But if you're willing to check in with some of those members and say, hey, can you get behind this? Can you tweet about it? Can you be an active?
Let's do it, bro. Yeah, I'll call you after this, and then just like point me in a direction, and then we can like try and tag team. And if anyone here obviously wants to help too, if they are API caucus members, that would be tremendous. It'd be like, look at this, for the API Heritage Month, we can you know, show a united front and help save some lives by getting money into people's hands.
Yeah, it's good that you both can work together. The other day, my son also asked me for the UBI help too. You know.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway, so it's a follow-up question from Katie also. Given the fact that our country is not quite prepared for the coronavirus crisis, Rose, what would you recommend Congress to do? You know, long term. You know, what we should prepare ourselves in the future is similar case happen to us.
Well, let's look at first what we could have done. I mean, we've got a Pentagon budget that's $740 billion. That's $140 billion more than what it was during Obama. Now, there was SARS research that was taking place in 2003. And as far as is the coronavirus, not the coronavirus that causes COVID-19, but another form of coronavirus. And that was discontinued in 2007, more or less because of a lack of funding. And when you look at the academic research, you see that there were all these papers up till 2007, and then it falls off. You can't expect the private sector to be funding research on vaccines or research on coronavirus, but we could have had a stronger public response. And so we need to have put some of that money that we've gotten to defense towards the NIH to be funding more basic science and research on vaccines, on antibiotics, on things that can help protect us as a country that may not be profitable. We should have doubled the CDC budget. I mean, the fact that we didn't have the testing capability in this country, the CDC budget is 1.5% of our defense budget. It's absurd that we couldn't have double that budget so we could have done testing. You know, the fact that we aren't being able to do testing is a lack of our manufacturing capability. I mean, the bottleneck is that we don't have enough capacity to make swabs, to make masks. And Mark Andreessen had a great op-ed. He said, okay, I understand we can't make vaccines, but the United States of America can't make masks. I mean, this is absurd. And, you know, we're dependent on China. It's a good thing that they're willing to supply us those masks. I mean, California is probably going to get 200 million of them, fortunately, or where will we turn? But we should make the investment in our country on critical manufacturing, critical capability, so that we don't have this situation again. Now, final thing I would say is just we need to listen to scientists and experts. I mean, you can't just govern by gut. And I'm very proud of Dr. Sarah Cody in Santa Clara County, who called for sheltering in place on March 13th.
Right.
This former CDC had said New York would have had 80% fewer fatalities if they had sheltered in place when Dr. Cody did. And she did it because she consulted scientists and epidemiologists at Stanford. But we need to rely more and value more science. Yeah.
As far as I know, that Bill Gates said the same thing as you did, you know, so unbelievable. Yeah. Anyway, okay. How about Buck? You have any question here, Buck?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine, Ken. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay. How about Joe?
Yeah, I have a suggestion. We have a lot of leaders here on this Zoom call. What can we do? Basically, it's very important. We have a very important election coming up in November. If Asians can galvanize and do something together, then the country will know that they have to respect us. If we don't do anything, we'll be trash again and again. So I would like for Andrew and Ro and other people to lead and a coalition to do something in November. It's no use talking about it. We have to do something.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. I'll respond to that. And I couldn't agree more. One of the things that surprised me when I saw the numbers, and I know some people here already know this, but that 75% of Asian American voters are now leaning Democratic. And back when I checked in on that, like a number of years ago, it was a very different figure. I think it was something like 55-45 or 58-42.
Yeah,
But we started leaning much more Democratic, maybe as a response to Trump. Certainly, I think that right now his inciting xenophobia, is only helping. And so to your point, Joel, we have to seem like we are a potent political force. And then we need to help someone win who then has to look up and say, okay, the Asian Americans helped me win. And right now, to me, that bet is Joe Biden, that we need to help Joe win. And Joe has a real uphill climb where Joe has a huge financial disadvantage, a bit of an enthusiasm gap. Like this election is degenerating into like a referendum on Trump. And it's very possible that Joe just wins because it's a referendum on Trump. I mean, I was part of the primary. Joe won states he never spent a dime in and never set foot in and didn't have a single staffer. You know what I mean? Like he just sort of like, it's possible that he just wins because everyone's like, like Trump is such a mess. But if we were to act as a community in earnest, in concert, in a way that frankly probably has not been in the case before, come in hard for Joe, donate money. I mean, right now, if the Asian American community were to donate a significant amount of money, like were to galvanize resources and people were to max out to Joe, they would notice because they are strapped for cash in a huge way. They don't have the ability to run traditional fundraisers because we're all trapped inside. And so right now, Joel, to your point, if we were to become significant donors, it would actually be a huge difference maker. So I'm going to do everything I can to help Joe win. Anything that their campaign asks me to do, I do. I'm going to be in his podcast next week. It looks like Joe might come on my podcast too, which was a mild surprise to me that his campaign thought that was the right move. I mean, I'm excited. My podcast does rival his in at least in the rankings. But that's what I would say, Joel, is that we need to come in hard. We need to seem politically unified. We need to donate at higher levels. And I will say that right now, this is the occasion because we're facing a president that is racializing this virus to his own political gains. And we're getting thrown under the bus because we know if all he's doing is ranting about China, that anti-Asian hostility will just increase. We ought to beat him. This is the time.
Andrew, I think the Asian Americans are ready to donate. How do we donate in such a way that they notice that we are doing it in a concerted effort? If I donate a few dollars here and there, it will be lost in the whole scheme of things. That's the number one thing. The other thing is that how do we galvanize to vote? Donation is good, but voting, the ballot, each one of us count. So we need to do more than just donate haphazardly. We have to have a concerted effort so that people know that Asian American can raise money if needed.
I agree on both fronts. So as someone who's run a campaign, direct contributions to the campaign are the most meaningful because they can spend the money directly. There is a maximum to that. So I believe it's $2,800. So I think if Asian Americans were to max out to Joe's campaign and then somehow we make a big deal about how many have done so and we monitor it, where you have an org, essentially if we had an org, let's call it the people on this call, who then reached out to folks and be like, hey guys, we're going to max out to Joe. And then we're going to jump up and down and tell them that we got 1,000 people to max out to Joe, which would be $2.8 million. They would notice that in a huge way. And then if you were to go a step further and say, and we're going to start the super PAC, it's going to be Asian Americans for Joe, and it raised significant amounts of money, and it spent some of its money trying to activate Asian American voters, and Andrew Yang and Khanna were in messages to those voters being hey, get up and vote. And if we're allowed to campaign in person, I would certainly happily do this. Then that would be, to me, a difference maker for the Biden campaign. They'd be super grateful for those things. And I would love to make that happen. If I can go to the Biden campaign, I'll tell you what happened when Trump's ad came out that called Joe soft on China. The Biden campaign reached out to me to respond, which I did on CNN later that night. So the Biden campaign's already turning to me for Asian American facing issues. And so if this were to get organized, I could very easily, like I've got a direct line to Joe and his campaign, obviously. I can be like, hey, Joe, guess what? Asian Americans coming in with this much money, this much voting power, and then he wins. The other thing is if he wins, the odds of my being part of the cabinet are pretty high. We've talked about that sort of thing too. And so this could be a phenomenal opportunity for us to reach unprecedented level. Obviously there's been an Asian American cabinet member before, but just like we could be the difference maker in this election, Joel, to your point. And I'm going to suggest that this is exactly the kind of thing we should be doing, in part because we are getting thrown under the bus by the current anti-China race to who can be tougher on China dynamic of this race.
Yeah, I actually like Joe's question. And also, I like your answer too, Andrew. So maybe we can have a strategy section to talk about that, Joe and Andrew. So later. So I like that.
Can I say something?
And yeah, so go ahead, Dennis. You have the Golden Gate behind you. It's a very, very charming kind of a background there. Go ahead.
So I'm glad to hear Andrew suggest the super PAC, because I think that it's important that our financial contributions be recognized. And I think that may, as an accountant, that may be the best way that it will get accounted and it'll be clear. On the other hand, over a year ago, we provide some data from the San Francisco chapter of APAPA on how the API community make up about 35% of the population. Tallinn said to me at that time that, Dennis, if we cannot have a voice in San Francisco, we cannot have a voice anywhere else. And I realize that we're a small city in the totality. But what we have been focusing on is galvanizing and mobilizing the various constituencies in San Francisco to get our people solidly behind issues that we have no disagreement about. These include the racial attacks on senior citizens and some of the other things that have been going on, the lack of representation in commissions in the city, the lack of managerial positions in city government, civil service, the police department, the fire department. And last night, we actually had a meeting. There is someone that's been woman named Nancy Tong, who ran for district attorney, did quite well, surprisingly, to many of us. And she has been appointed by Mayor Breed to be the commissioner on the police commission. That is probably the most powerful commission and most demanding commission of all the commissions we have. And we had a large group that met and we're committed to supporting her. And so, Joe, what we're looking for are issues that we can get our people used to supporting, that we're not going to be putting one Asian against another Asian, and to show what we can do working together. And that's what we're doing. And from that, we're going to keep building it. And once we start realizing what we can do working together, then I think we'll be able to encourage our API community to start voting in a large block.
Thank you.
So that's what we're doing.
All right, thank you. And I have a question here from Rachel Yan. And so her question to both Andrew and Ro is that, how would you like establishing a new position or cabinet member position called a new Secretary of Technology to be headed by Asian American like yourself, or maybe either one of you? How do you like that, and why you like that?
I'll answer. Actually, this is something that Joe and I have talked about, is creating a new Secretary of Technology and Innovation post, and he would tab me to fill it. And it's a very easy position to give to someone because no one's competing for it because it doesn't exist. So that's a conversation I've had with Joe directly, like just Joe and I. I think that there needs to be a position like this. I think that the odds of Roe being my successor in this position pretty high if all of this goes well. So you should know that what you're describing is a great idea and something that I agree with, and I know Joe agrees with.
Yeah.
I would just say that I love my job. I love serving in Congress. I hope if the voters can keep me there, I can do it for at least 3-4 more terms. I think representing Silicon Valley is a great honor and privilege, but I think it's absolutely essential to have someone like Andrew in the cabinet. And I would just say two things very practically from that perspective. And I can say this given, he may be a little bit more bashful. I think we should make sure that we're having Andrew as the face of the conduit to the Biden campaign, and that we're organized about that, because that will help us have a maximum say in making sure that the cabinet looks like America. And it would be very powerful if Andrew were in the cabinet for someone like me being in Congress from Silicon Valley, for us to be doing things together. And the second thing I would say with innovation and technologies, and I'm sure, Andrew, you'll figure this out, is I'd want to make sure that position had real authority. I was in the Obama administration at the Commerce Department, and the traditional departments do have real budgets and real authority. And I think if you
I know, Ro, they've got like a massive budget and an agency that already exists. Whereas if you create something new, they could just become like the annoying person who like doesn't actually have like real responsibility. So I support you whatever you want to do, but I almost wonder whether if it's better to get you as Secretary of Commerce and then like have you push to reshape commerce and other things at the Secretary of Technology, or if Biden's really committed to having a Secretary of Technology that has under it some of those agencies. But I think if it's just doing what Anish Chopra did, and I like Anish, who was like Chief Technology Officer, or Vivek Kundra, but they did not have sufficient operational authority. I completely agree, Ro. And that's spoken like a real vet of government. So you should know you're 100% right. And like the worst case scenario is Andrew gets put in like some ceremonial role that like gets nothing done in X period of time. Right. Not to say I didn't describe someone else there, but it's fine.
Ro, I have a question for you, Ro. I mean, and actually talking about this point about technology in you represent Silicon Valley, and there's a tension between the U.S. and China in terms of technology and trade. You know that we actually in Silicon Valley sold about north of 200 million billion of product, semiconductor product to China. If we have a problem with China, so how do you tell our Silicon Valley company that what we're going to do? You don't have this kind of a sale to one of your biggest customer. What would we do here in Silicon Valley to deal with this kind of problem?
Well, I don't think that blocking sales to China is the answer. I mean, look, we have to, when we are dealing with China, prioritize human rights issues with the Uyghurs. We have to prioritize intellectual property reform. We need to prioritize reforms on fair trade. But you don't do that by just saying, okay, we're going to block trade between the countries, when China is the third largest exporter to the United States, where we have a lot of trade and global supply chains with China. Partly trade prevents war. I mean, that's if the Soviet Union and the United States had as much trade, we probably wouldn't have had as bad of a Cold War. So the framework I like to adopt is one that Tony Blair actually came up with, which was sort of cooperative competition. How do we cooperate where we need to cooperate and compete where we need to compete? But I would just say, like, let's consider Huawei. I was in the security conference in Munich with Speaker Pelosi, and the former president of Estonia got up and said, okay, you're telling us not to use Huawei. We understand that. What are you offering as an alternative? And I think our country needs to be more focused on, well, why aren't we building the next generation of 5G technology here? What are we doing to compete in the technologies of the future instead of trying to just ascribe blame to another country? So I rather we focus on things that Andrew talked about. How do we develop math, science, technology in our country and development across the nation? And I think if we do that, we will outcompete China. I fundamentally believe a free market system and a democratic system in the long run is better, but we should focus on how we do that internally.
Yeah.
I think
we have about what, 5 minutes to go? Is that true?
A little bit.
I
longer,
have a
I believe.
question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, Alec.
Hi, Andrew. Great to see you again. Hi, Congressman Rowe. I'm a resident of your district. I do have a question that's more about economics and mostly about UBI and the associated revenue stream. You know, the main reason I was resonating with your presidential campaign is the fact that your message about human-centered capitalism, because I do recognize that while the invisible hand of the market is motivating and advances in technology, big data, and business efficiency, et cetera, are fantastic, the current priorities of capitalism really is to pursue growth, during which process workers and everyday people are often seen as resources to extract value from, rather than using the increased productivity to create better well-being for people. That being said, even though, eventually we would need significant political and economic structural change to catch up with this change in technology and productivity. And UBI is a way to address the widening inequality and provide a safety net. So, however, the funding of a large-scale UBI of any meaningful amount really requires a sustainable revenue source, which you proposed to be from a VAT during the campaign. So here's my question. Number one is a two-part question. One is, when you look at the VAT to cover the majority of UBI, how would that address the fact that many companies, especially in tech, are increasingly relying on internal processes and intangible investments, a lot of which are difficult to track compared to, if a car company buys parts to sell. So how would you consider building that into the VAT calculation?
Did you have a second question, Alec, on top of this one?
Yes. Yeah. The second question is, with the Humanity Forward initiative, a lot of the grants are coming from private donations currently. So I wonder what the long-term plan is, considering that on one hand, private donations might not be sustainable or large scale, and on the other hand, without large scale implementation, the full economic benefit and the trickle-up effect of UBI might not be fully realized. So the long-term plan for achieving that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alec. I'll start with the second one first, but they're both great questions. I'm very happy to say that we're getting a significant 7-figure donation into Humanity Forward probably in the next week for $5 million. It's not public, but so I think you're right that we're going to be looking at private philanthropy in order to fuel some of this economic relief that Humanity Forward is providing right now. You need, it's a different animal than the political campaign was, where the political campaign, lots of small dollar donations. Humanity Forward, like, it's going to be the occasional philanthropist just being like, here's lots of money to help. So it's it's an exciting thing. Please keep that private, but it should come out next week. To the question about the value-added tax, I think you hit the right one, which is, does the value-added tax actually identify the investments that many tech companies are making? It certainly would, like, for example, point of sale for Amazon revenues, but does it capture when Amazon invests hundreds of millions of dollars in AI, or like buys this AI company, or these sorts of things? And I think that's something that we need to really dig into and figure out how our archaic, out-of-date tax system actually starts accounting for those kinds of investments. And one of the tough things right now is that you have these trillion-dollar tech companies spending billions of dollars gobbling up companies, and no one's ever profitable, and there's never any tax revenue. It's like some of the biggest, most successful companies in our society are paying zero. Amazon, Netflix, Starbucks, though it's not in tech. So our tax system needs to be revised. Value-added tax to me gets us a lot of the way there. And Alec, I agree with you that there's still another segment of value that value-added tax does not get you. That in a way, I was using value-added tax as like a shorthand for like this system that starts capturing some of the intangible and intellectual property assets that, or the data, like the fact that our data is now worth billions of dollars, and like no one's seeing a dime on that. But I agree with you that the value-added tax does not get you all the way there. And that last segment is something that we have to work on very hard.
Thank you. Thank you.
We still have to have
yeah, Ken, this is Albert again. I didn't want to hog your time, so I waited until now. Since Andrew has a direct line to the Biden campaign, I think it would be important that we all understand that bashing China is sort of in vogue during presidential elections. I've been following this for some 30 years, and that is normal. We expect that. But would he be able to make some very distinct statement and repetitively emphasize that Chinese Americans are not China, that we are not to be the victim of this fight between the two great powers of the world? I think that would go a long way in terms of me being able to raise money for him, because I'm meeting resistance. People who are for Trump are quoting what he says against us. And of course, Trump is much worse, but they don't say that. So it makes it very difficult.
I love this. I agree with this. I will raise this with him. I will get a statement out of them sometime the next number of days. Potentially when I'm on his podcast, then we can just take that audio and then you can use it. But one thing that I would love to try and coordinate on is, to the extent that there are people on this call that can fundraise for Joe, that are going to max out to Joe, et cetera, let's try and do it on a single day. And let's choose a day in late May, because it's AAPI Heritage Month. Jack suggested that we do it on the day that I'm on his podcast or he's on mine, and that comes out. And then we make a big show about the fact that like Asians donated on a particular day, and then make it, because I remember when I was running, you would notice something like that. It's like you have a particular fundraising rhythm and you make a little bit more when you send out emails, you make a little bit more when you have an event. Like if Andrew Yang is in conversation with Joe Biden and they raise hundreds of thousands of dollars extra that day, like they'll notice. You know what I mean? And that's how we get a statement from Joe and his campaign that that Chinese Americans are as American as anyone else, that like our issues with the Chinese government have nothing to do with Asian Americans, that they're completely different people. So I would love to work with you all on making this happen, on getting that statement from Joe and his campaign. I was glad that he amplified the All Americans campaign. I sense that they want to do these things, but we need to present it to them in a way that's like clear and executable for them. If we do that, then I think that we can get these things done. But part of it will be, if we can show that it's going to help their campaign, then it becomes a no-brainer, because they're strapped for cash. I mean, they're not like strapped like they're gonna, like they'll notice if we come in a significant way.
Right. I think it's a good point to follow up with him, Albert. And Albert and Joe, maybe, and Dennis are going to talk about that. We'll put some
let's plant a flag. Let's make it May Day. There's going to be a day when like we come out for Joe in a significant way, especially if you were considering donating anyway. You might as well just coordinate it and make it so they can't miss it. Let's pick a day in May. I'll coordinate with Don or whomever, and then we'll pick a day and
Brilliant
just try and raise
idea.
money that day.
Great idea.
I think that's a great idea.
Let's go to the Joy. Joy has been coordinated this entire conference by herself. So it's let's give her a question. Joy.
Hi, Andrew. Yes, Andrew and Roll. Yeah. I just have a quick question, regarding to China. The Chinese Americans are very divided. This is a very dividing issue. Chinese Americans, we are very diverse. Some are like older generation who come under the repression, and we are coming under the time where the U.S. China are in their honeymoon. So there's a lot of Chinese Americans who are born here. They consider they are just Americans. So the attitude towards China are very different, among us. So like we all like to support Joe Biden, but I like to see, what kind of a message we want him to, send to us. So we'll like all get united to support him. For me, I think the U.S. should be strong towards China, because we are completely different political system, value system. So, but how do we strike a balance? And then St. Joe can still, get our support.
This is, I think you just named like one of the central challenges for this campaign, particularly in like a very short soundbite or a campaign ad. So I think most of us agree that there's an ideal world where the US has a very rational, competent government that is not trying to incite Cold War or worse with China. And to Rose's point earlier, that we're able to collaborate on things like the next pandemic, like climate change, that we're not resorting to just like saying China's the worst and like I'm going to try and show who's tougher on China. Like that's not productive. Like, can we have real issues with the Chinese government? Yes. Like, do we still have to try and maintain like the right kind of relationship to accomplish our own goals? That's the way I think I operate. I imagine most people here on this call operate this way. It's like, look, you have your own goals. You got to get them done. Like, and like China's obviously not like going anywhere. So like we have to figure out where you can agree and work with them and where you have to stand tough. Now
Yes.
that's the vision, but that vision is very hard to deliver again in a campaign ad when Donald Trump is spending millions of dollars saying you're soft on China. And then what's like the only response you can do if you're Joe is like, no, I'm not, you're soft on China. Which is unfortunate. And then like all of us are like, well, that's like not very helpful, because then it just seems like whoever's tougher on China is like supposed to be like, our leader. So it's a really difficult dynamic that we have to help them manage and moderate. And the thing that I'm excited about is that they are reaching out to me to like be like, hey, you want to respond to this? Like that, they clearly do not want to incite xenophobia against Asian Americans, and so we have to help them. But this is a real challenge, and I agree with you that Chinese Americans are going to have different perceptions, because some Chinese Americans are angry at the Chinese government right now. Some Chinese Americans are angry at the U.S. government right now. It's like, you'd have like a different perspective, and I would respect it. It's just we have to try and like help the Biden campaign come up with like the right narrative, the right balance in the context of a life or death campaign from their perspective. So it's a tall order, but they're looking for help, in my opinion. Like they need our help. And if we can make it worth their while, having been a candidate, you just do whatever you think is going to help you win. And so if we can show that having a nuanced narrative on China and Asian Americans is a better path to victory, then that's where they'll go. But in order for them to go that direction, we're actually going to have to show them that this is a winning path. and to do that, we're going to have to invest in a way that may be new for us.
It's almost a little bit like the father and mother in a divorce fight, and then the kid got squeezed in the middle, don't know what to do, So it's a kind of sad, and
it's very sad, and we know this is a generational disaster for our community. It is, and like the people on this call have a chance to make it better. Like we're not going to be able to solve it all, because the fact is, like, I mean, the kid in Ohio who's getting bullied right now, I mean, like, they're like these things are happening, but we have to do everything we can, and I think we can make a huge difference, because I'll give you an example in the All Americans campaign. The fact the NBA wants to work with us, the fact that we got all these people know it's the right thing. People know that being racist and xenophobic towards Asian Americans is completely flat out like wrong and inhuman. And like, and it's us that have to help them channel that awareness towards action. But we're going to have to lead them there, because even if someone agrees with us, they're not going to take up our cause for us. You know what I mean? Like we have to take up the cause, ask them for their help. Like if we try and lead Joe in the right direction, I believe that they'll come our way.
Yeah. Besides this We All American initiative you have put together, you also have this API Leadership Council initiative. Could you elaborate a little bit on this API Leadership Council initiative, and what would you like to achieve there?
Oh, it's I think we'd all agree that our community is not really that unified in most things. I think that this crisis is causing us to come together potentially and show unity in a way that has not been the case, because there's virtually no Asian American organization that right now is not being catalyzed to action for the fact that our community is in like a crisis mode on multiple fronts. So hopefully this leadership council can actually start to demonstrate that we're more unified, at least in some of the big issues, than maybe we ever have been, and that we can galvanize real action in a way that can change the tenor of this election, can change the messaging around the set of issues, can hopefully dampen the racism that's being directed towards us. Yeah, I mean, that's a very, again, tall order. But the Asian American community has been fragmented for a long time. And I believe that we can help change it. I think that like Roe is one of the most influential Asian American legislators, obviously, in the country. Like I have now bigger following than most national politicians, even though I didn't win, which is cool.
Right.
So those are two big starting points or pillars. I think we can try to do our best to reach out to other pillars of the community and actually create like an Asian American unified political voice in a way that has not existed before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think if you two of you being the leader, we have to rally behind both of you to make a difference. You're the generation which a little bit step, below our generation. We're in the 60 and 70. And I think you almost represent our future. And we would, I tell you, we would rally behind both of you. And I would make sure that everyone would do.
Well, thank you, Ken. Really appreciate it. I see some questions about the next generation, because if me and Ro are the generation after you, Ken, then there's a generation after us. so shout out to some of the people that like Will. Thank you for your work on the campaign. One thing I'm going to just put a pin in, because I think he's going to be here next month. I'm going to be endorsing David Kim, who's running for Congress in California. I think he's a great role model for our community. Like I just think the world of David. I think he's going to be here for a long time. And so there are people who are doing the work in communities that, and we have to empower them too. It's like there really is a generation after me and Ro, some of whom are on this call. And that's where the action is in many ways. Like this race. This race made me realize a lot of things, but one thing it made me realize is that I'm not as young and hip as I used to be.
You're the most hip person on the stage, though, Andrew.
It's all relative. Well,
it's all relative.
So Don, I think that what this is about the time. We have to make a conclusion. And do you have the last word to say to us, and or maybe?
Yeah, I think it's maybe we can give a Ro and Andrew each one have a last statement at the closing remark. and I will close with several logistic issues to all the audience. Okay. Yeah.
All right, let's get the Rose to say first. Okay, Rose,
Right.
go ahead.
Well, first, let me thank you again, Ken, and thank Don San and thank Andrew for all that he's doing and done for the Asian American community. I'm excited to partner with him for the long run. You know, I'll keep it very simple. If you look at the 21st century, there are a few things that are going to matter. Technology is going to matter. It's reshaping our world. Science is going to matter. Entrepreneurship is going to matter. And the United States' relationship with Asia is going to matter. That's what's going to fundamentally, in a broad way, shape humanity in the 21st century. And so if you believe that, as I do, then the Asian American community is absolutely essential in helping us lead a better, more competitive nation and a better world. So the way I look at this is that there is this huge asset that we have for the country, and that we can make an extraordinary contribution, and we're just beginning to do that. So I look forward to working with this group to do that.
All right, thank you. Okay, and Andrew, last word.
Thank you, Ro, and thank you, Ken, Alec, Don. So many people have supported my campaign. I know some of you supported my campaign early on when it was not clear that it was going to be like as successful as it was. Super grateful, very appreciative, and I believe that this country is at an historic crisis point right now, and it really is going to be up to our community to help pave the way, like what Rose said, where if you look up, we are heading towards a Cold War or worse with China. We are facing record levels of racism and xenophobia against our community. We need to try and build a future. And this really, in a way, it's like my race again, but amplified, where I actually believed that my race was going to be important, or my candidacy was going to be important, because I was focusing on these issues that affect all Americans moving forward. And I thought that, unfortunately, like, our government leaders right now are completely ignorant of a lot of these economic and technological issues. And now I'm more certain than ever that that's the case. That our government is essentially on like a 20-year tape delay. Like, what do I mean by that? It's like our government is like essentially stuck in multi-decades of the past, in part because the nature of our leaders and the nature of DC as a town. I'm sure, Ro, you feel like you're going in a time machine every time you go back and forth. Like, you know, like anytime you're in California, you're like, hey, I'm in 2020, and then you go to DC. What year is it in Washington, DC, Ro?
That's true. You know, I was joking around when the tax debate was happening in Congress in 2017. You could have taken the Republican talking points and Democratic talking points, and you wouldn't know whether the debate was happening in 1986 or 2018. It was the same exact talking points. The language hadn't changed. And frankly, some of the people in Congress haven't changed.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same freaking people. So we have to help move this country forward, and this country needs us more than ever. I genuinely think it's going to be our community that really helps shine a light and lead us in the right direction. And I'll actually go a step further and say, if we don't do this, it's going to be very, very hard times for our community for a long time to come. One of the hard lessons I learned from my race is that people don't actually pay attention to Asian Americans very much, like out in DC or in the world or in media for the most part. Like, it blew my mind. Like, it's like, we have a very, very big challenge, but this country needs us to lead in a way it never has before. And I will say too that this is necessary for our community, because our community is getting the brunt of this crisis in a way that is heartbreaking to me. I know it's heartbreaking to many of you. We have to do everything we can right now, and I'm grateful to all of you for investing in me and my campaign early on. And we have to go bigger now, because the needs are bigger than ever. The hatred and racism are going to be more powerful than ever. They need us, and I need you. So thank you for all of your help and support. Let's work together to make May a great month.
Yeah.
Maybe we can stake a flag for the Biden campaign saying, yo, you need to listen to Asian Americans and stop just doing this like tough around China bit. And if you do that, then we'll help you win.
Okay.
Okay, and I think it's way over time already. And first, I appreciate Ken Fang as the moderator to control the entire entity. The second is that we still have a lot of questions, and if people want to stay, I'll be here as the host to continue discussion. If anyone want to pass the message to Andrew, pass to Roy, just feel free to stay. I'll be here. I know there are a lot of questions and the people is keep in line, try to ask questions. But next month, the first week, we're going to have a second API Leadership Council Zoom meeting. And then it's, if people is, be the member, and if you like to join the member or any suggestion, just coming to me, and I'm stay here. And also it's I ask people to support the Rose campaign as well. So it's the Asian, and the Rose never take a PAC money. And if anyone here want to support the Rose, just please donate to him as well. And the Humanity Forward and the Rose Connors, we are one identity. I hope we can move forward together. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for the
Thank
message.
you, everyone. Appreciate the heck out of you. Stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
All right.
I'll stay here. Jack.
Hey, Don.
Jack. Okay. So it's we're going to come into our own session, and I think it's whoever want to talk, just raise your hand, or it's just jump in to talk. And we're going to make a collection of all the questions and send to Khanna and send to the Andrew, and brainstorm. Go ahead. Who want to be the first one to talk?
Hi, Don. This is Kaylee.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a